Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name is Emma Lefebvre, and today I'm going to show you why you're having trouble mixing the perfect color you want and why you just end up with those muddy brownish colors. We're going to do a little bit of explaining about color theory today. So let's jump right in and start. Okay, so today we are taking a deep dive into color theory and why certain colors make muddy colors. And we're specifically going to look at mixing the color purple, maybe even green, because those can be a little difficult to achieve the shades we want. Now, from kindergarten, we have learned that red and blue make purple, right? But have you ever tried to just take red and blue paint and you try and mix purple and you come up with this kind of like almost blackish purple, and it's just like a muted kind of purple, and you're like, what the heck, I want that one? Well, there's a reason behind that, and that's because it is the hue of the red and the blue that you are using. So a lot of times when we're picking out our paint colors, we grab any blue, we grab any red, and we just assume that that's going to help us with our color mixing. But in fact, which I'm sure you've noticed, you go into a paint store or an art store and you notice there are like 10 different blues, 10 different shades of red, and you look for the one that says red and you get this cadmium red, which I will show you in my palette, and then you get a blue that's like Prussian blue and you're like, that should do it. Well, let me show you. We're going to dissect these colors just a bit. So here's my cadmium red, and it's funny because my Winsor & Newton paints, which these are, when I wanted to buy a set of the paint tubes, the red that they had in there was cadmium red, okay? And if you look at it, it's quite an orangey red. So I'm going to tell you now it's not great for mixing. And then the blue, let's grab ultramarine. I don't actually have Prussian blue in this palette, okay? And this blue is nice and dark. It looks pretty normal, right? But there are undertones to each of these colors that are going to affect the outcome of the color mixture, okay? So let's look at them a little bit closer. Here's my trusty color wheel. Now, if you have watched my video on warm and cool colors, this may be a bit of a repeat for you. And if you haven't, I suggest you go watch it because this is going to explain everything. Each hue of a color, so every color, has a certain undertone or a warm or a cool tint to it. Now, what does that mean? Basically, here's an example of two different reds, okay? They're both reds. I believe this one was either Winsor red, I think that's Winsor red, and this one is cadmium red. This one to me just looks orange, all right? It just looks like straight up orange. It's labeled red, but it looks like orange. Now, what is orange made up of? Let's look at our color wheel. Yellow and red. Now, if you know anything about color mixing, you'll know that when you mix all three primary colors together, you get a shade of like a gray or a black or a brown. For fun, let's just do it just for say, I don't know which red to use. Okay, I'm gonna put red here, then I'm gonna mix some yellow in there, then I'm gonna mix some blue in there. And we get black, essentially, right? So if we go to mix a red that is a warm red, and we know it's a warm red because let's split this color wheel in half. These three colors are warm. These three colors are cool. But this is warm, right? You're just like, it's just warm. How could a red be cool? Well, a red can lean either way. It can lean towards purple, have a bit more purple or coolness to it, or have a bit more orange to it, which would make it warm. So it could be either a warm red or a cool red. Looking at this red, okay, especially compared to this one on my color wheel, this one is definitely leaning more towards orange, which will have an undertone of yellow in it. And when you mix all three colors, right, we're going to be adding blue, and then this red, which has a yellow undertone into it, we're going to be getting kind of this muddy black, right? So that's going to cause our purple to have this black tint to it. Crazy, right? Now looking at our blue, okay, blue is right in the middle. It's a cool color, right? But for this sake, which I'm still trying to understand myself, if the blue leans more towards purplish or red, it's a warm blue. And if it leans more towards green, it's a cooler blue. Now, I don't know exactly how that works. I can't tell you exactly. But warm blues have more of like a purplish red in them. Cool blues, like a turquoise. Let me show you a turquoise. Okay. Have a cooler tone to them, which would make them a cool blue. So this one is actually a bit darker. If you look at the two, right? It's a bit darker. It's leaning a bit more towards purple. So we're going to be mixing a warm blue and a warm red together. And let's just do that so we can see what happens. And this is what happens. I remember even like trying to teach in kindergarten, right? My students saying red and blue make purple. But then you give them their red paint, which always tends to be a bit more on the orangey side, and the blue paint, and then it comes out this color. I'll show you. Need a bit more red in there. Just gonna move it towards the middle. And that's not too purpley, right? It's kind of black. So really what we want to do is we want to mix two colors together that will lean the same way. All right. Lean, and by that I mean we want a red that's going to be a bit cooler, that's going to lean more towards purple, and we want a blue that's going to lean more towards purple. So we already know the ultramarine is already kind of leaning that way. It has that purple or reddish bias to it, undertone to it. But we know this one has an orange or yellow. So we want to find a red that's going to lean the other way. And honestly, I have a couple different reds, and we can actually test them out. This is like one of my favorite reds. It's more of like a cherry red. It's a Winsor red, and you can already tell the difference, right? It's a bit more vibrant. It has a bit more of a pinkyish tone to it. But when I like to mix purple, I like pink, okay? Pink derives from the color red, and it's always the safest option, okay, when mixing a purple. But we're going to mix both of them with ultramarine just for the heck of it. So let me just do another little swatch down here of both, and then we'll mix them, and I'll show you. So these both have like a cooler tone to it because they're leaning a bit more towards blue, more so the pink than the red. So we'll probably get a better result with the pink. Okay. Yeah. This Winsor red is still a bit more on the warmer side, but let me just lighten this up for you and just show you. That's still a purple, right? We're still coming out with a better outcome rather than that kind of muddy color. And then let's mix the ultramarine. Look at this purple. Get a bit more pink in there. You got to get half and half. Look at this vibrant purple. And that's the kind of purple we look for, right? They have the same bias. They're both leaning towards the same secondary color. Okay, we found a red that was leaning more towards purple and a blue that was leaning more towards purple. All right. Okay. So that's how you make a good one. Let me just mix this one more time just to show you. Just because I feel like that's not as great of a representation. Our cadmium red here. And then our ultramarine blue. Like, that's not purple. That's not purple. Okay? It's just not the same. Okay, so that's why that happens, okay? And I really hope that's a good explanation for it. Now, another one is mixing greens. And the thing is, with greens, I feel like you can't go wrong because you can get beautiful shades of green. But just looking at this mixing chart, I want to explain these mixes. So these mixes are made with two different blues and two different yellows. So we have phthalo blue and French ultramarine. So phthalo blue is more on the cooler side. Okay, it's leaning more towards green, which I believe, yes. Okay, that's it, that's phthalo blue. And ultramarine is leaning more towards purple. Okay, essentially red, it's warmer. Now, when we mix them with these two yellows, we have Hansa Yellow Light, which is more of like a lemon yellow. It's like a pure kind of yellow. And then we have New Gamboge, which has a bit more of an orangey tint to it. So if it has an orangey tint to it, that means it has an undertone of red. So essentially we're mixing yellow, red, and blues. That is why you're gonna get more of like a neutral green, which in my world, I actually love for my florals. So when I'm trying to mix a really nice neutral or like, you know, olive green, I will tend to go for a more orangey or yellow, because I know it makes it look a bit more natural, okay? When really the Hansa Yellow Light is very, very bright and vibrant, and it's gonna make this more like artificial looking kind of green, right? So that's, I just kind of wanted to explain those mixes, and let's just do it for fun because I like mixing colors. Look at that purple. Never mix red and blue, just mix pink and blue. And the thing with pink is that you can mix it with any blue and it really will make a beautiful color. Okay. So the colors I have in my palette for this color mixing chart, I used Daniel Smith, their primary set, which if you watch the video, it's actually a great set because, sorry, get excited about color theory, because it actually comes with a warm and cool tone of each color. Okay, so it comes with two yellows. One is warm, one is cool. Same thing with the reds, although this is quinacridone rose, so their cool red is essentially a pink, and then you have their warm red, which is more on the orangey side, and then the two blues, which is more like of a turquoise, and then a warmer blue. Cooler blue? Warmer blue. Okay, so this is a great set. It came with a little bottle of watercolor ground, but if you're ever looking to create your own tube palette of sets, does that make sense? Tube set of like your hand-picked colors, I would suggest going with something like this, these colors, one cool, one warm tone of each. And you're golden, you can mix all these colors. Okay, let's get back to the green. Sorry for the rambling. I really hope this makes sense and I'm not all over the place. Okay, so in my palette, I have, which you can see here, this is lemon yellow. This is pretty contaminated because I don't tend to use, yeah, it's not really lemon yellow. It has a tinge of green because I only use it when I'm trying to mix like a fluorescent green. So this is not true to its actual color. So it's a little bit contaminated with green, but that's because that's all I use it for. But my go-to is always cadmium yellow. Okay. And while it has that bit of an orangey tint to it, I find it mixes well with any color. And when I'm trying to mix a green, I like that orangey tint because it will create a more neutral or muted green. All right. And then the blues that I tend to use the most are turquoise. These are my Winsor Newtons, so they're different than the Daniel Smith. Oh, not turquoise. And ultramarine. Okay. So I'm going to explain why these mixes are going to do what they do. Lemon yellow and turquoise, they are both cooler. Okay, they're on the cool side. Okay, they have a cool tint to it. The lemon yellow leans more towards green. Where's my... Okay, and then the cadmium yellow leans more towards orange. Okay, so that's going to have a green undertone, even though it already does, but it's just because it's contaminated. That's going to have a red one. The turquoise is a cool color. It's leaning more towards green, and ultramarine is leaning more towards purplish red. So what's going to happen, and this is how we can kind of visualize the color that we want to make and what's going to happen, how you can kind of predict the color that it's going to make. Let's look at this mix for a second. If we mix cadmium yellow and ultramarine blue, this has a bit of red into it, right? It has an orangier tint to it. So we know that if we have yellow, red, and a blue, we're going to get more of a black. It's going to be a more muted tone, depending on how much of it we add of each color, right? If we do half and half, it's still going to be green, but it's going to be more of a neutral green. So we can kind of assume that that's what it's going to be. So I'm just going to grab it and see what we get here. So there's our yellow. And there's our blue. And see that mix? It's actually pretty, I'm going to lighten some of it up so it's a bit lighter. You get almost this olive-y color. Okay, it's not like a bright saturated green that you would get if you were to mix lemon yellow. Okay, so let's mix lemon yellow and turquoise and I'll show you the difference. Lemon yellow, and remember it already has a green. I know this isn't too great of an example, but because they're both leaning towards green, you're going to get a more vibrant green. Ready? It looks kind of artificial, right? And that's because they have the same bias. So it depends on what color you want to mix. So if I wanted to go for a more muted purple, I might actually use a little bit of yellow in my mixture to create a muted kind of like fallish purple. But if I want something vibrant, I want them to have the same bias, the same undertone. So I would go for something like this. But it depends on the color. Usually purples, I want something nice, bright and vibrant. My greens, I want them a bit more muted and neutral. What if we mix the opposites? Let's just take a guess. So again, this is leaning more towards green. This has yellow and a bit of red into it. So again, we're getting blue, and this also has yellow, a tint of yellow or green in it. So if we're mixing all three, maybe mixing these two might create the same kind of muted tone. So let's do it. Okay. There's that. And there's that. Okay, we still get a vibrant-ish green, but it's still darker because of the yellow we used. It's still a bit more of a natural green because it has that little tint of red that's going to neutralize it. All right, if that makes sense. Okay, and then lastly, our last combination would be the lemon yellow and the ultramarine. Trying to guess what's going to happen. Again, I think we're going to get more of a neutral tone because they have different biases. This is more of a cool green, or I keep saying green because it looks green, a cool yellow. And I know this is not going to be truthful because it does have that green tint in it already. And then we have our warm blue. So let's just test it out. I should clean my yellow, but it's my palette and I use it for however I use it. It's just not a good example for this. Our ultramarine. And there we go. Again, we're not getting a vibrant kind of artificial looking green. We're getting a bit of a natural green that has a bit of a muted kind of neutral tint to it. Okay, and that's because of the mixtures that we've used. So I know this is all over the place, but I hope this made a bit more sense about color mixing. It's always great to dissect your colors and learn more about them, because then you won't be surprised when you mix colors. But if you just want to, play around, I highly suggest making a color chart just so you can get to know your colors just by making one. It's a really great thing to have just as a reference. But if you really want to kind of get to know them, swatch them and maybe play this game where you're taking a guess, like what is the undertone of this color? What is the undertone of that color? And really kind of take a guess and see if you're right. And that's about it. So I hope that was informative. I hope that was as clear as it could have been. My pregnancy brain has been pretty bad, so if it doesn't make sense, let me know in the comments that I need to do it again, and I will. But until then, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it, and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram for even more. Have a great day, guys. Bye!